Hermod's Errand. As the road was rough and painful in the extreme, none of the gods would volunteer at first to go. But when Frigga promised that she and Odin would reward the messenger by loving him alone above all Aesir, Hermod signified his readiness to execute the commission. To enable him to do so, Odin lent him Sleipnir, and the noble steed who was not wont to allow any but Odin upon his back, set off without demur upon the dark road which his hooves had beaten twice before. In the meantime, Odin caused the body of Balder to be removed to Breidablik, and he directed the gods to go to the forest and cut down huge pines, wherewith to build a worthy pyre. But when the gods were to the forest gone, Hermod led Sleipnir from Valhalla forth, and saddled him before that Sleipnir brooked no meaner had than Odin's on his mane. On his broad back no lesser rider bore, yet docile now he stood at Hermod's side, arching his neck and glad to be bestrode, knowing the god they went to seek how dear. But Hermod mounted him and sadly fared in silence up the dark untravelled road, which branches from the north of heaven and went. All day and daylight waned, and night came on. And all that night he rode and journeyed so, 9 days 9 nights towards the northern ice, through valleys deep engulfed by roaring streams, and on the 10th morn he beheld the bridge, which spans the golden arches Gjal's stream, and on the bridge a damsel watching armed, in the straight passage at the further end, where the road issues between wailing rocks. Balder Dead by Matthew Arnold. The Funeral Pyre. While Hermod was speeding along the cheerless road which led to Niflheim, the gods hewed and carried down to the shore a vast amount of fuel, which they piled upon the deck of Balder's dragon ship Ringhorn, constructing an elaborate funeral pyre. According to custom, this was decorated with tapestry hangings, garlands of flowers, vessels and weapons of all kinds, golden rings and countless objects of value. Ere the immaculate corpse, richly attired, was brought and laid upon it. One by one the gods now drew near the lake to last farewell of their beloved companion, and as Nanna bent over him, her loving heart broke, and she fell, lifeless by his side. Seeing this, the gods reverently laid her beside her husband, that she might accompany him even in death. And after they had slain his horse and hounds and twined the pyre with thorns, the emblems of sleep, Odin, last of the gods, drew near. In token of affection for the dead and of sorrow for his loss, all had lain their most precious possessions upon this pyre, and Odin, bending down, now added to the offerings his magic ring, Draupnir. It was noted by the assembled gods that he was whispering in his dead son's ear, but none were near enough to hear what word he said. These sad preliminaries ended, the gods now prepared to launch the ship, but found that the heavy load of fuel and treasures resisted their combined efforts, and they could not make the vessel stir an inch. The mountain giants, witnessing the scene from afar and noticing their quandary, now drew near and said that they knew of a giantess called Hyrrokin, who dwelt in Jotunheim and was strong enough to launch the vessel without any other aid. The gods therefore bade one of the storm giants to hasten off to summon Hyrrokin, and she soon appeared, mounted upon a gigantic wolf, which she guided by a bridle made of writhing snakes. Riding down to the shore, the giantess dismounted and haughtily signified her readiness to give the required aid, if, in the meantime, the gods would take charge of her steed. Odin immediately dispatched 4 of his maddest berserkers to hold the wolf, but, in spite of their phenomenal strength, they could not restrain the monstrous creature until the giantess had thrown it down and bound it fast. Hyrrokin, seeing now that they would be able to manage her refractory steed, strode along the strand to where, high up from the water's edge, lay Balder's mighty ship, Ringhorn. 70 ells and 4 extended on the grass the vessel's keel. High above it, glit and splendid, rose the figurehead ferocious, with its crest of steel. The Saga of King Olaf by Longfellow. Setting her shoulder against its stern, with a supreme effort she sent it with a rush into the water. Such was the weight of the mass, however, and the rapidity with which it shot down into the sea, that the earth shook as if from an earthquake, and the rollers on which the ship glided caught fire from the friction. The unexpected shock almost caused the gods to lose their balance, and this so angered Thor that he raised his hammer and would have slain the giantess had he not been restrained by his companions. Easily appeased, as usual, for Thor's temper, although quickly roused, was evanescent. He now boarded the vessel once more to consecrate the funeral pyre with his sacred hammer. As he was performing this ceremony, the dwarf Lit provokingly stumbled into his way, whereupon Thor, who had not entirely recovered his equanimity, kicked him into the fire, which he had just kindled with a thorn, and the dwarf was burned to ashes with the bodies of the divine pair. The great ship now drifted out to sea, and the flames from the pyre presented a magnificent spectacle, which assumed a greater glory with every passing moment, until, when the vessel neared the western horizon, it seemed as if sea and sky were on fire. Sadly, the gods watched the glowing ship and its precious freight until suddenly it plunged into the waves and disappeared. Nor did they turn aside and return to Asgard until the last spark of light had vanished, and the world, in token of mourning for Balder the Good, was enveloped in a mantle of darkness. Soon with a roaring rose the mighty fire, and the pile crackled in between the logs. Sharp quivering tongues of flame shot out and leapt, curling and darting higher till they licked the summit of the pile, the dead, the mast, and ate the shriveling sails. But the ship drove on, ablaze above her hull with fire, and the gods stood upon the beach and gazed. And while they gazed, the sun went lurid down into the smoke-wrapped sea, and night came on. Then the wind fell with night, and there was calm. But through the dark they watched the burning ship, still carried o'er the distant waters on, farther and farther, like an eye of fire, to showed in the far darkness Balder's pile. But fainter, as the stars rose high it flared, the bodies were consumed, ash choked the pile, and as in a decaying winter fire, a charred log, falling, makes a shower of sparks, so with a shower of sparks the pile fell in, reddening the sea around, and all was dark. Balder Dead by Matthew Arnold. So that was Hermod's Errand and the Funeral Pyre, the 6th and 7th sections of Chapter 21 of Myths of the Norsemen by Helene A Guerber, Balder. I will be working my way through this book section by section, and if there are any other public domain books that you would like for me to read, please leave a comment below. Did you enjoy this video? Then subscribe for more, and be sure to check me out on Facebook, Twitter, and Patreon. Thank you for listening, and have a lovely evening.